Okay. Well, here we are. We are going to discuss our new album called Release. We are, I guess we called ourselves the Mystic Frequency Collaborative because others may join us at some point. Anyway, both Kathi and Joanne were here in this very room. We were doing some training for frequency immersion practitioners, and one of the things that I like to do is turn on the recorder and let's just practice playing together. Let's do a sound bath. Let's do a drum circle, play some drums, find out what they all sound like, then go play the crystal bowls, do all of that stuff. And the next thing I know, we have an album that we're creating. We don't know what is going on. We just allow things to happen. So I'm going to open the door with that. What have you guys got to add to that piece?
Go ahead, Joanne.
Well, one of the things that I'm thinking about first is just playing percussion is like play. And so we had fun just playing with music and listening. And one of my favorite things in the world to do is be spontaneous and just play what I hear and just go with the flow. And so first of us doing the percussion, it was just a wonderful chance to play. And what amazed me about this whole process is how the three of us were able to gel together. I feel like whatever it is with us together, there was something magical and special about the three of us happening together. And one of our friends said, oh, if you're doing percussion, make sure you record it. So I remember saying, hey, you're like, should we record this? I'm like, yes, we should record this. So I just felt like something good was going to be coming out of it. So it was a good start.
For me, as a trained vocalist, playing with percussion instruments was brand new. Del had introduced me to it earlier this year when I came to visit in January, but I didn't have a lot of confidence in what I was doing with percussion instruments, even after spending that week with her. So when Del suggested our first evening together that we do a drum circle, I'm like, oh yeah, let's give that a try. But I'd never done one before. And as we were getting into what we were doing with the different musical instruments, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And I remember saying at the end of our session, we have to do this every night because I've never done this before and this is too much fun. This is our relaxation time. But Del had recorded it. So when we sat down the following day to just see what Papa would do with us with the crystal bowls and and Joanne's metal bowls, the Tibetan metal bowls, to clarify, we weren't thinking about putting the two together at all. At least me personally, I saw them as separate. And we recorded that session together. And then Del, who's always reaching for something that hasn't been done before, or something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, said, let's put the two together. And of course, they had been done and recorded on separate days at separate times. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think that's gonna sound too good. But of course, I put on a smile and said, oh yeah, let's do that.
We love your smiles, Kathi.
And what amazed me was it did go together and it belonged together. And we could tell that from the very first time we listened to it, which is really cool.
Well, once they were together, it just seemed like, there was this conversation. Remember when we listened to it again, and then when we edited the audio, we're having discussions on, because at that point, once they were together, I know the first thought that went through my head, creation is groaning. Creation is groaning. It's speaking. The drums seemed like to be the language of creation, the things under the earth, the things that can't be seen. And they were trying to have a conversation.
And when we came to that realization that there was this conversation going on, I suddenly realized that this was the next piece after the song that we had done earlier on in the year, in May, I believe, called America's Restoration Song, that I realized this was like a follow-up piece to that, because in that composition, in that piece that we did together, the words were, let the voice of the land speak, let the voice of the land cry out for peace, for rest, reconciliation, and several other things. And it was, I suddenly realized, and the more that we talked about it, I think we all realized that this was the door that we opened to allow the land to speak to us. And creation was taking us up on our invitation and speaking in that first piece. And that was like, again, we knew that was Papa. We knew that was Holy Spirit. We knew that was Jesus.
Well, I might add too that restoration song, which I'll put a link in the description below this, I recorded the keyboard and the flute part and sent them each a copy of it. They did not hear what the other person had done until I put the whole thing together. And I just literally plopped all three parts. And what's up there, I took a few of the sounds and things that Joanne had at the beginning and put some at the end. But other than that, there was no editing. And our natural mind thinks, well, how can you create something when you're not in the room together? Kathy's in Washington, D.C., Joanne's in Chicago, and I'm in North Idaho. That's as far away as you can get from one another. And so this thing, when we're all together, seemed natural. So someone want to speak a little bit to the second song that we did, which is, we did Peace in the River first, even though it's the final song on the album.
I will. So we did the same kind of technique where we recorded a drum part and then we recorded some bowls. And this time when we put it together, I was kind of crestfallen because it did not fit together. And we ended up doing more rearranging and realizing, okay, this drum part doesn't seem like it fits together. So we ended up doing a little more production, and I'm also just commenting that I'm used to doing my own recording track by track. So it was a real switch for me to just have Del plop it together. So when we had a little more chance to do we ended up doing a few more track and layering on the second one. And that was super fun for me that loves music production and loves adding sound effects or whatever. So I was just really having fun, and the three of us were like researching sounds and feeling out what should be put together. So it was a whole different approach, but it turned out amazing. And having the water sound go through the whole thing was a whole different feel than the other.
I think we only ended up using 4 layers because we had the sound effects. We did the crystal bowl part first, and then we added the tongue drum as a separate part. And then the vocals, I think, was the last. Was there flute in that one? Yes. There was Native American flute and singing, which I believe I did that. That was all at the same time that the singing was going on.
And I think we either used a different percussion track. We
didn't use a percussion track at all.
Okay.
We were going to, and it didn't work.
Right.
And then that's when we realized, okay, again, learning to get out of the box. We tried this with the first one. Well, that's not what we were supposed to do for this one.
Right.
So now let's go on to the third one, which we call Release. Well, that one to me was weird. Weird in a good way.
Well, Dick and I host a noon call 6 days a week, and we have been listening to Dell's music now for the last year, almost year and a half. And many times we are playing one of the pieces, and you can find a lot of her music on YouTube. And so we had been using America's Restoration song, and now we have taken the songs from this album and used them on multiple occasions since we first produced this. And what that's allowed me to do is, in the moment you're recording and you have a sense of what's going on, and we're listening to one another, and we're trying to read and respond to one another, even possibly playing notes over and over again, or rhythmic sequences multiple times. But when you get to listen to it, then again, it's a different experience because you're immersing yourself into the music. And as I've listened to this song over and over again, which was a real stretch for me, again, I'm a vocalist. The only vocalizations we were making were noises. There's not much singing in that album. And but what I realized was that the percussion drives the music. And it just yesterday, I think it was, we were on the noon call, and it's an ascension call that Dick and I do with people. And I was sensing sound, obviously, which was allowing me to visualize and see pictures. But I realized, I kept asking, what is, there's a third piece, what is it? I'm not understanding it. And then I realized it was motion, it's the dance. And that piece in particular is really all about the dance in the Godhead between Papa, Jesus, and Holy Spirit, as well as the dance, God calling to creation, creation responding, man speaking to creation, creation responding. But it's constant motion, and so you get this sense of moving forward. And a lot of the percussion suggests to me just things being released, things being broken off, things being opened up, things being transformed and changed. And as different as that piece is, I think it's a good different. I think it's a different that's full of possibilities and potential for the listener to have an experience that they may never have had before.
I have to make a correction. The tongue drum was in this one, not the other one.
Okay.
You're right.
You know, when we are doing this spontaneous stuff, we're stepping into things that we've never done before.
There's no score.
There's no score. There's no musical score. So you have to learn to listen to what's coming from in you, plus watching each other. Joanne, you and I on this one were facing each other, and we were doing all kinds of motions. Because we did the vocal track separate, then the percussion track. Those were the two. And then, of course, we added a few other little things in there. So, Joanne, you want this was an interesting one.
I love sound production and just spontaneous sound, but the challenge for me, who's a perfectionist in recording, was we had a recorder sitting there, Dell's high quality Zoom recorder, and whatever sound we made, it was going to be used. We're talking no editing it out. So for me, it was just like, okay, this is the flow, this is the moment, we're capturing this moment, what we capture in this moment is going to be. And just going with the freedom, say, okay, we have the freedom, let's just see what comes out. And so it's a moment of capture of the three of us that is just there. And there's that just having to go with the flow and be crazy. And I just love the chance to be crazy and just see what comes out. So it was just fun to react off each other. And we ended up editing the percussion track a little bit in that it was too long, and we ended up shortening it. So we did have the ability to hear the percussion as we were going, and that was kind of the guide for us to kind of watch and feel what the percussion was doing and respond to it.
Yeah, because when you're watching it scroll across the screen, you see all the peaks and the valleys in the whatever you call that, the little thingy that goes across the screen for the sound recording. So you could kind of see when something was building up. But I think that even when I record my other albums, I would always do the keyboard part first, then I would go into the recording studio and we would add the percussion. So I'd be responding, but I didn't necessarily know what I had done in the keyboard part first.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can actually be together and we were in unison, in sync,
Yes.
quite frequently,
Yeah.
is amazing in itself. And that just shows that when you are one together and you are working as a unit, amazing things can come out.
Yeah.
So if we can take a moment and just speak into the spiritual aspects of what this album is doing. I know, Kathi, you already talked a little bit about the second song, Release, and I mentioned a little bit about the first one, but what about the Peace in the River?
Well, it's interesting that Peace in the River was actually the second song that we recorded, but we decided to put it in third place on the album after we recorded the second song that you listened to, because we felt the progression was conversation. That's the first piece, more about responding and talking back and forth. The second piece felt like it was, like Joanne said, it was freedom. It was the release. It was the breaking off. It was the stepping into new things. It was heaven coming down to earth and breaking in new ways, creating breakthrough. Peace in the River, we felt, was better as the third song on the album, because once you have that release, then you are able to step into rest. You are able to immerse yourself and go into a place to process what you've just experienced, in things breaking off, in having breakthrough, in things being released, in doors opening and stepping in. And it just seemed more appropriate to take Peace in the River and make it the last song. And to me, it's just an affirmation. It's like me responding then to what I've experienced in the first two pieces, and then affirming and remembering all the truth that I've received in my spirit and singing it out.
Well, that one actually is a song that you had pre-written.
Correct. Well, I had received, from the Lord as a download. Yeah. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. I just held on to it. Because the way I receive words many times is more, I hear a phrase and the rhythm of the words, the up and down of the pronunciation of the words and the placement of the words suggest a rhythm to me first. Interestingly, as a vocalist, that's kind of backwards. And it's like I get the rhythm first and then I get the notes. So I had received the words to that song as a download several months ago, maybe even as much as a year ago, and just had been sitting on it, singing it to myself. But the way we recorded it was a little different than the way I had first received it, because we felt that the words needed to be strung out, if you will, and allow the percussion to suggest the next time to move to the next phrase.
And you took it out of rhythm too, and changed the rhythm, and you added some melismatic things in there. Melismatic was highly used in the early music of the Renaissance and medieval times.
Yeah.
So, Joanne, your fits on that one?
It was just really cool again to see how organic and how actually felt perfectly. Things just flowed. It's not like we did more than one take. I mean, Kathi just ad-libbed it really, and it all came out. I just find it amazing and there's just something powerful behind the fact that this all fell into place. I'm in awe when I think of this album overall. I am just amazed how everything just gelled so amazingly. And it seems like that's not something we could have ever thought of or tried to do out of our will, that it was something bigger than us that brought everything together the way it happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
We really didn't know what we were doing, guys. We just did it.
Well, and that is the key is you have to get outside of yourself, outside of your musical recording paradigm of what we think. You know, I think I made the joke to you guys that had this been a group of classical musicians recording a piece of music, we'd still be here.
Editing it and changing it. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, because I worked in the recording studio for a while, and seeing some of the stuff that went on, I had no idea what can typically happen in recording sessions, especially during the editing process. And to me, that takes away from the organic part.
Yes.
And when the voice of the land speaks, when the voice of God speaks, it's a now thing. And I think that we all believe that this whole album is a restoration piece.
Yes, absolutely.
And it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the future. And again, we call ourselves the Mystic Frequency Collaborative. It's not, the album is not under one person's name. There is not any one leader. It is a group effort. It's not typical worship style where you have the singer dictate and direct what's going on. It truly is a collaborative and was a collaborative experience, which I believe is leading to, it's part of what I call the new style of worship, for lack of a better term. I think people understand that, but worship is no longer, it's, the definition is changing.
Yes.
Because, you know, I'm thinking the second song, the release song, that's the dance, that's the conversation, that is the coming into union, that is, oh, you have this to say? Wow, I didn't know that you did that, or that this happened. Well, here's my piece. I mean, and let's put this together. You know, I mean, to me, so you've got, in the different sounds, we don't know what a rock sounds like. We don't know what the voice of a rock sounds like. We don't know what the voice of the sky sounds like. So all those sounds that we were making could very easily be representatives of things in creation that we have no idea that we might be representing their sound. So anyone have anything else to add?
Actually, I do. You will notice in the music, in I believe all three pieces, there is usually a piano bass line being kind of being the foundation that we're standing on together and responding to. And Del does that quite a bit in her music, and some people might find that repetitive or tedious after a while, but the way I receive that and I hear that is that it is the foundation that we stand on, and it's the way it's a necessary and important piece, because the rest of the harmonics of the music or the rhythm in the percussion gets built on that. It's like the foundation of a house. And I think it's important. It's another way that the voice of the land and creation is suggested to me personally, because I like to sit out on my deck at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. And sometimes I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning before the birds are even up. And I'll sit out there and I will listen. And the first thing that you hear, both at the beginning and the end of the day, is the hum of the crickets or the locusts. It's like they're the foundation, and it's a constant sound. It's It's a constant pitch. There's no rhythm to it. And to me, that's what Dell's doing with her music when she puts that at the foundation of the music. It's like creating that low hum that is the foundational voice. And I just wanted to explain that in my experience and what it says to me. I'm sure it'll say different things to different people as they listen to the music, but that's what I love about it.
Well, if you remember, when we first started doing this, if, you know, you can't really, I have to move the computer, but if you look back over there by that window, there's a black, my fingers right there.
Speaker, yeah.
That's a speaker. That is a subwoofer. I found that when you are putting the sound behind the crystal bowls, it excites the crystal bowls and gives them better ring time. There's some, you remember that, Kathi, when we first did it, we were like, oh my gosh, these crystal bowls are responding better.
Yes, yes.
And to have the sound coming from behind where they're sitting makes a difference.
Yeah, yep.
So you try different things and some things just happen.
Yep.
But nothing really happens. There's always a reason for it. I would have never thought that I would have drones and things in the music, but if you go back to the medieval and Renaissance times, they had this instrument called a hurdy-gurdy, which you'd sit there and go, and then they had to have a vocal part that went up above it. And they, at that time, they believed that was a very holy sound. And in some ways, it almost seems like we're going, I don't know, I would have never thought that just was an accident.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an accident.
No, there are no accidents in the kingdom.
No. So, Joanne, any last bits that you want to add?
Well, what Kathi was saying makes me think of the Schumann resonance and the fact that there is a sound coming.
Yeah. Well, there are fundamental frequencies that are just humming all the way throughout the earth, and we're used to it. I mean, you go outside and you can hear power lines buzzing. You hear the sound of locusts, and there's always this constant hum of sound in creation. So it seems to me that the drone is representing the sound, this constant sound, the constant voice of creation.
Oh, and that's one other thing I wanted to add is science has found that the crops grow better when the birds are singing. And there's a response of creation. So the plants are growing better when the birds are around. And they've even got companies that'll pipe in over fields sound of birds or sound of nature, and the crops grow bigger. So there's a whole synergy that we don't even understand.
Oh, we could delve deep into frequencies on this one, but that's for another video. So I encourage people that if they're looking to participate with the restoration and with co-creation and all the pieces of this that we as mankind get to participate in, engage with this album.
Yes.
And let it speak, and you speak as well, because when you listen and you add your own voice, you're adding another dimension.
Yes.
So go for it.
Yeah, I want to encourage that. I'm sorry, Del, I don't mean to jump in again, but when we've done these songs on our new call, it does elicit a response, and sing along with the album. Don't just listen, participate with it and sing with it, because you will hear things coming out of your mouth that may surprise you in a good way.
Dance, grab a drum.
Yep. Or
do whatever. You are part of the collective.
Yeah.
When you join in with this music.
Amen.
So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and hope people enjoy. There's the recording.